Thank you for the wonderful introduction. As Lucas mentioned, we're kind of starting along the natural course of what a project might look like. And the Faculty Research Development Office, we work with pre-award, and some even call us the pre-award phase of proposal development, because we do a lot of the really emergent work of supporting faculty and working with research administrators on proposal development and research development. Just to get a better idea of who's in the Zoom room, I would like for you each, please, in the chat to try and use 10 words or less. I'm not going to be very strict about word limits here, to describe what your role is with research administration or research development at UNM. It doesn't need to be a sentence. Just try to make it about 10 words and try not to use your formal job title. I'll give you about 30 seconds to just put some things in the chat, and then we'll hit enter all at once. I'm curious who's pre-award, post-award, what campus you're from, so anything like that. And then just all right, I'm seeing a lot of things populating in the chat. This is great. Pre-proposal development, that's wonderful. Pre and post award accountants. I see some coordination, some fiscal work, research translation. All right. So we've got a very diverse crowd here today. So hopefully what we're saying across this whole life cycle is going to be useful in different ways to different groups who are joining us. But thank you all so much for sharing what your experiences are here. To give you a quick overview of what our office, the Faculty Research Development Office, does, our mission is to really facilitate proposal development and to bolster faculty research more broadly. So we are sort of in the middle between what the principal investigator comes up with as their big research idea and when they're actually submitting a proposal to the Office of Sponsored Programs. And I know that we sit in sort of the same space as a lot of departmental admins or college FRSOs do a lot of similar work that we do. And so we're going to try and differentiate the roles a little bit today and talk about how we work with both PIs directly and department administrators, because I feel like that's not a distinction we make very often. The key takeaway always, whenever I'm talking about the Faculty Research Development Office, is that you're not alone. We're a group that knows a lot about the proposal development process. There are embedded faculty research support officers in a number of units across campus, and we're an accessible group. So if anyone ever has any questions about proposal development or the pre-award phase, always feel free to reach out to us and ask any of those questions, even if we're not the right person to answer. We'll definitely help you find the right person who can answer your questions. Some of the specific services that we offer as an office are we can help PIs to search for funding opportunities that are aligned with different research ideas that they have. We also can support facilitation and team building and collaboration. This is something, most of our services are primarily relevant to main campus and branch campus faculty and research, but facilitation is something that can be more widely accessible because it doesn't rely on specific systems like Streamline. It's more about ideation and trying to really get ideas flowing. We support proposal development as well as running the limited competitions for UNM's main and branch campuses. And we also offer a number of different kinds of trainings and workshops. And those can be, again, both for PIs directly, but we can also work with department administrators or groups of department research folks to provide some information and training on various topics related to pre-award and proposal development. And we also support the OVPR's various initiatives like the We Are One internal funding programs. So really quickly, I just wanted to make the distinction between how FRDO typically engages with PIs directly versus how we can best support and work with research administrators across campus. And so some of the things I wanted to point out is that a lot of what we do can really supplement or complement the work of research administrators in different places across the university. So things like team science facilitation.
Yeah, my two boys have an appointment here at 10:30, and we're just running a couple minutes late. We're still waiting for one of them to get sent up to check out of school. So I just wanted to let it's Calum and Rylan McKernan.
Are we able?
We're at La Cueva, so I mean we've been here for like 10 minutes, so hopefully he's
Brianne?
coming anytime now, but
You can mute her. If you go on the box that she's speaking from on the right, there's some dots at the
thanks.
top.
Thank you. All right. So in addition to complementing some of the work of administrators, the things I was going to mention are with team science facilitation or editing. A lot of times this is beyond the capacity of what a lot of research admins are able to do. So if there's a PI that you're working with who would like some of these supplemental services, you can reach out to us to see if we have the capacity for that. And we can also provide one-on-one training and support for department administrators. If you're working on a proposal with a PI, then we can work with you and walk through some of the pieces of the proposal development so that you can help to support your faculty as well. If you have any questions or uncertainties walking through streamline or policies or processes. And we also, again, can offer workshops to department administrators. And also remember that as research administrators or research development professionals, you're always welcome to join any of the PI workshops that we're hosting. We host workshops on things like how to use Pivot or find funding, how to develop budgets effectively, or broader UNM proposal processes. And it's always great to have a nice diversity of participants in those kinds of events. So why should you reach out to us? Just we're here, we're accessible. If you have any questions, it's good to ask them and get help, and it can help to save you time in the long run. And then in these slides, which I can share with those who have registered, I included a few additional links to resources. The College of Education and Human Sciences, Arts and Sciences and Engineering all have great PI toolkits or research support websites. And you can take a look at those to see if they would be helpful to what you do. And then I've also got links here to the Office of Sponsored Projects and the Office of Research Integrity and Compliance. And the PI listserv is always a useful place to learn about what's going on in terms of the research enterprise at UNM. And so one of the ways to sign up for that is to go to our website, frdo.unm.edu, and then scroll down to the bottom of the page where you can sign up for that listserv. And I think, Lucas, do we want to save questions for the end?
I think we can go ahead and do the FRDO questions now, and then we can do the proposal team, OSP proposal team questions. So if we have any questions for Hannah, yeah, go ahead and let's go ahead and ask.
So I
Hannah,
do.
there's one. Oh, sorry.
I just opened the chat.
Go ahead. That's
cost
exactly what I was gonna say.
information available for the services that FRDO offers. So we do not currently have a cost model. Our basically we're funded through FNA from the main campus and branch campuses. So our services are available to faculty and research administrators, anyone who's on the main and branch campuses. And if you're on the health sciences campus, I would say the services might be more limited, but we'd always welcome you to reach out and ask if you have questions or ideas for ways to collaborate. And I'll also just throw in the chat our email, frdo@unm.edu. And if anyone has any questions or wants to talk about ideas or potential workshops or collaborations, we're always open to that. So please feel free to reach out.
Do we have any more questions for Hannah? If not, we're going to go ahead and pass it off to Medium.
Great, thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen as well. I have a PowerPoint separate from the one that Hannah shared. Does everyone see my screen?
Yes.
See it just fine.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I am part of the OSP proposal team. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the services that our team offers as part of the Office of Sponsored Projects. So you can see there's a few offices under the OEPR, which I believe Hannah already mentioned. But you can kind of see under the branch of OSP, we have a couple separate teams, and I'm part of the proposal team, which is what we consider pre-award. And our job as part of the core office is to support the research mission by providing administration, management, and oversight of extramural sponsored research. And we try to further the research mission by being a resource through professional expertise and quality service, and aspiring to embrace compliance aspects of our charge. So on the OSP website, you actually have access to what we call the roadmap, and it kind of shows you what different module or record type you might need for your different research activity. And it actually links to different resources that kind of walk you through all of the steps of creating the record and what we require, the documents that we need to be able to complete the review, to be able to get to the next step. So part of OSP's job is reviewing all of those documents and then making sure that they're meeting all the compliance aspects and approving those, and then we help you with submission. So the hope is that you come to us pre-submission to the sponsor so we can make sure that we are aligned with the UNM rules as well as federal laws and regulation and other sponsor guidelines. So the review and submission process can be found on our website as well. The biggest thing we like to emphasize, which I believe Hannah brought up as well, is time is your friend. So we want to be a resource to you. FRDO is a fantastic resource to help with the development of your record beforehand. But as much advance notice as you can give, the better, because that'll help make sure that we're meeting the various deadlines that we need to meet to make sure that we are being able to get funded. So step one is to create a streamlined record. And at that point, you do not have to have the record complete to be able to make an appointment prior to the deadline. But we just ask that you have the record started so that you can have the streamlined number to create the appointment. Then for the record to be considered complete and final form, you've probably heard that language from our office before. You basically complete the sections that are required for saving. They'll be asterisked, and then you'll have the required documents that go along with the specific module. And our biggest thing we like to emphasize is to try to make sure that your appointment is at least 2 days before the sponsored deadline. That'll ensure that if there's anything that needs to be addressed that might take additional time, that we're able to get it completed, the review completed prior to the deadline. So the final form of required documents varies. The 4 that are listed here are specific to full proposals, the RFP or solicitation, the scope of work, the budget, and budget justification. And that's part of what we will review whenever we are going over the full review of your proposal in the streamlined record. I also want to just mention there are a few things that have additional exception requests. Things that come to mind would be like off-campus F&A, any sort of special F&A exception, and there are processes on the website. Cost sharing is a big one that would require approval from the Office of the Vice President of Research prior to submission. So those processes are available on the OSP website, but we just emphasize to try to bring that to our attention as soon as possible so it doesn't delay the review and doesn't make us rush to meet the deadline at the very last minute. It kind of helps relieve a little stress on your side, and it helps make sure that there aren't any sort of hiccups or anything like that. And during the review appointment, We don't require that you are in person. It's not a face-to-face appointment. Typically, we are communicating primarily via email, but I very commonly hop on Teams or a phone call if needed, if we need to get a little clarification or if there's something that you would like to discuss more in details. So we ask that you're available, especially towards the last hour or two of your appointment, to make sure that we can have all the approvals needed prior to submission. And the plan within the proposal review appointment is that we are to submit by the end of your appointment to the sponsor. So that's our hope. So there's a few ways that you can schedule an appointment with us. The easiest way is on our homepage. There's a green button on the right-hand side. You click on that and it'll take us to the scheduler. You'll put in the record number, either the QP quick proposal number or the PD record number. And your name, if you have a departmental contact or an FRSO that was assisting you, put their email in there so that we know who we need to be in contact with during the review. And we'll be able to help you in that way. There's a couple other links within our website under the proposal section. If you click into the defining your opportunity or the proposal review the UNM way, there's actually links to the scheduler as well. But I always reference people to the green button because it's a quick and easy way to get into the reviews. Right. Before I get into questions, the only thing I wanted to mention, just circling back to making sure that your appointments are prior to the deadline. Anything that is more than 2 days from the sponsor deadline would typically be considered a comprehensive review. And there's a list on our website that tells you everything that we are reviewing within the proposal, including the documents, the compliance aspects, every part of what the RFP requires for you to submit is something that we will go through in the proposal team just to make sure that your package is in complete and good form before we submit to the sponsor. In special cases, we know life happens. Sometimes you have to schedule a review, which is same day or the day right before the deadline, which usually works out perfectly fine. We try to have that flexibility for you. We just caution you that that is considered a essential review. That does not mean it's a speed review. It just means that we are requiring the minimum essential compliance aspects prior to submission to the sponsor on the deadline date. So that means that the PI is actually going to be responsible for any of the proposal materials that are outside of the OSP review scope. And we really urge you and encourage you to try to schedule a review at least a couple days before the deadline to make sure that we aren't having this rush so that we're not submitting within the last hours and minutes of the deadline. That just helps make sure that you're not rushing, there's less administrative burden, and it makes sure that we're meeting the deadlines with a little bit less stress. And that is all I have. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Miriam. Anissa asks in the chat, is it my understanding that FRDO helps with finding funding, providing training, etc., while SPO is available with the actual proposal submission and other items dealing with the grant?
I threw an initial response in the chat, but I would welcome others to add to it. The way I think of it is the Office of Sponsored Projects tends to be more focused on the compliance of proposals and whether a proposal that's been put together is meeting the requirements and policies of UNM and the sponsor, whereas FRDO works on developing the parts of a proposal before it gets submitted to OSP. So that could range widely from like coming up with ideas and brainstorming, like you mentioned, Anissa, but also it can include helping with putting together budgets and pulling the pieces of a proposal together.
And I believe it's also pretty common if the sponsor contacts start recognizing names from either our office or FRDO, that they'll actually email opportunities to our office to let you know what's available to apply to. So I believe that's part of what FRSO helps with as well, is letting PIs know that we have received invitations to apply to opportunities. And they help make sure that you know the deadline and the timeline that you need to have the documentation together prior to the review. But yes, I do agree. A lot of the services that we offer are essentially review and approval. So you should be as close to ready to submit as you can be by the time that it gets to the proposal team.
And so I see Gary is also asking, do you need to be must a PI be faculty? And there are different guidelines for the health sciences campus and the main campus. So Gary, I think that if you were, would you submit a proposal through the health sciences campus?
You know, this part of the funding is new to me, so I'm not sure, but I probably so, since we're under the medical school.
Yeah, I think you would. So I'm not sure if anyone can speak more to the specific PI requirements on the health sciences side. I know on main campus, you don't need to be a faculty member necessarily, but you may need to complete a PI eligibility exception form if you're not.
Which Medium has just dropped a link to that in the chat. So if you want to go take a look at that to kind of see if you who might be eligible, and if you need an exception request, you can access that at the link that Medium just posted.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And I can also follow up, Gary, about the PI eligibility on health sciences, even though I don't know it offhand. I know people who would know it, so I can send you an email.
That's great. Thank you. We actually, we had a grant where the PI was unable to finish, and then it was just really difficult finding a new faculty to do PI. So we just had a few months to go. So I might reach out later. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jill just put a link in the chat too. Thank you, Jill.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Medium? Got one in the chat.
Between a quick proposal and regular proposal, when do you need to do both? That's a great question. So our roadmap is really helpful for helping you kind of determine which module you might need quick proposal or PD record. Typically for quick proposals, it requires slightly less information because typically you're not submitting a budget. So I see letters of intent, pre-proposals, white papers, unsolicited funded contracts would also be in a QP module. And then the proposal development module would be for a solicited full proposal. So sometimes that would be a task order under a master agreement. We have even had supplemental requests done through the proposal development module because it requires slightly more information, specifically the budgetary information in there.
If anybody else has any questions, or Helen, if you're still unclear, you can drop that in the chat. But if we're not seeing anything else, I'll go ahead and get started talking about systems. Let me share my screen. Everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Right. So you guys have met me. I'm Lucas Reynolds. As Marina introduced, I work with OSP. I'm their business analyst, and I've been helping to maintain their various systems over the course of the last 6 months or so, since March. So my primary role is to manage the systems of OSP. That includes the pre-award team, the post-award team, and the contracts team. All three of those teams have separate modules in Streamline, and a lot of the systems that I manage also overlap with the systems that FRDO and ORAC and CGA use. So I actually end up helping a lot of the other core offices as well with various issues that they might be facing. And I've gotten to know Hannah pretty well over the course of the last few months. But yeah, working in Streamline, I primarily service the pre-award, post-award, sub-award, and negotiation modules. And we have a few other modules. Export control is being rolled out very soon. We have IRB, we have COI, and those are managed by some of the other offices. But we've been working very closely together over the last few months. So what my support looks like in those systems, I'm primarily doing account management for research administrators, PIs, making sure that folks have access to the units that they need access to the functionalities, and making sure that we comply with data security practices. I perform maintenance to make sure that we are have the latest information. I keep up to date with approval queues, new units being added to the system, updating questionnaires and such in Streamline. And I also manage error and bug requests. And very soon I'm going to show you the portal, how you can kind of report those things to me if you need access, if you need an update to approval queues in Streamline, or if you're just seeing something that isn't supposed to be happening. But Streamline is not the only thing that I'm servicing. We have a number of other internal systems that I'm helping to manage. And the ones that you research administrators are probably going to be seeing the most, besides Streamline, are the various sponsor portals that we use to submit our proposals through. Now, I like to say there are two types of sponsor portals. There's the institutional accounts, and then there's the one-to-one systems. Or as I like to say, they're the ones that I can help a lot with, and then there's the ones that I have a hard time helping with, just because of the way that the system is designed. So the portals that have institutional accounts, we as an institution, UNM, can create an account that is managed by OSP, and specifically by myself. So I can take care of account management, give people the access that they need, and help them when things go wrong. A lot of our larger federal sponsors tend to have these institutional accounts, like grants.gov, research.gov, NIH. All these portals I help manage, and I can generally provide a higher level of service. But we also have one-to-one systems where it's essentially the PI creates an account, and then they have to add people to the account to be able to help them. And that goes for FRDO. If you want to add an FRSO, a lot of times the PI has to create their account and then invite them. Same goes for our reviewers here at OSP and our award managers. And we see this a lot with, it's more often seen in our award systems, but also some of the pre-award systems as well, especially foundations, tend to have this one-to-one type of functionality that's a little bit harder for me to manage. But that being the case, do not hesitate to reach out. I do try to provide, at the very least, I can manage to scrounge up some user guides and try and do some troubleshooting. And if worst comes to worst, reach out to the help desk of the particular sponsor that we're having trouble with. As you can see here in the PowerPoint, which you guys will be, I believe, will be receiving copies of, there is a link to the sponsor portals that are most commonly used by OSP. They are on our website, and you can find them along with user guides and account creation tools on our website. So if you need help with that, you can access that there. You can also find that link underneath the Systems tab on the OSP website. You can find a lot of other tools and things that can help PIs and research admin alike. But primarily, if you need support from me, the best way to get in contact with me is to open up a support request using this link. There's a similar link underneath this dropdown, and you'll be prompted to answer a few questions, which we're going to go over now really quick, just to because it can be a little intimidating. But there's a lot of options, but ultimately, at the end of the day, no matter what your problem is, it'll get routed to the proper person, usually me, and we're going to try and help you as best we can. So if you go to this link, you'll be able to see a landing page that basically says, if you have UNM Net ID, which all of us here have, you can go ahead and start submitting your ticket. When you click on that, it's going to fill in a lot of your personal information from your single sign-on, and it's just going to fill out the better part of the list. So that takes a little bit of the burden off you. You don't have to input your name, input your phone number, email, etc. And you're going to be asked a few questions. And the most important one is, what is your role? And for the most part, we're going to be using, I am a research administrator, or I am we do also have an option for I am a researcher / PI. So if you are submitting on behalf of a PI, you can use that option. And then there's a third option for I'm a core office administrator. So if you happen to be a core office worker, you can submit a ticket to me that way. And then you're going to be asked what you want to do. And a lot of them are geared towards Streamline, but a number of them are geared towards sponsor portals and other requests that we receive through OSP. So for example, what we have here is if you want to create a Streamline proposal record and you need access for some reason that you don't have. Maybe it's you're trying to create a Streamline record for a unit that you don't see when you click on the drop down, or maybe you don't even have access to that module. You can use this request portal to get that in front of me, and I can try and provide you the figure out what access you need and provide it to you. So that's about all for me. If you have any questions about sponsor portals or about Streamline technical issues that you might be having, you can submit a request ticket in that support portal, or if it's hopefully, if it's a relatively simple question, go ahead and drop it in the chat and I'll see if I can help you. We'll zoom back up because it wanted to minimize so I can see the chat.
So Lucas, there's a question about whether HSC folks should use the same link to start a help ticket. I do not believe so, correct?
Yes, so HSC, typically we do have some instances where HSC users are submitting underneath main campus. And if that is the case, then you're probably going to want to submit a ticket through that portal. But otherwise, it would be best to reach out to your own HSC SPO to kind of get clarification on any system support that you need. Okay, if we are HSC, to link to the HSC SPO website. All right, well, I don't think there are any more questions in here. And with that, we are just under time.